How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chaf, Daf 21 of Masechta Zevachim. Friends, friends. First of all, friends, I'm experimenting with some new tech over here. Hopefully everything will go smoothly, although I can't promise. Wait, come to think of it, I should really begin a backup recording over here. All right, I'll do that in a second. But anyways, I'm experimenting with some new tech over here. So hopefully that will go well and there won't be any technical difficulties. Today we are studying Daf Chaf Aleph of Masechta Zevachim. What we have on the agenda is the effect of tumah on Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglaim. Okay, fine. Somewhat similar to like what we were discussing at the end of the Daf yesterday. We were talking about, well, what if you leave the Azara? What does that ruin the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglaim, for example? So we're going to have a similar question today with regard to if you become tameh, what effect does that have on Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglaim? Do you have to re-Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglaim? And then we discuss Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglaim in the kiyor. Now that's an interesting one. So if you have somebody who, normally the kiyor is like a, what do they call the kiyor? What's the kiyor in English? I don't think it's called the fountain, but the kiyor thingy, the thing where the water is dispensed from. So the basin, I think, right? So there are spouts and the water comes out of the kiyor and you wash your hands and feet that way. What if you stuck your hands and feet in to the kiyor? Is that acceptable or is it not acceptable? That's section number 2. And finally, Linah for the water of the kiyor. There's going to be a 3-way machlokes. That's kind of like the sugya, I'd say, for today. All in all, hopefully it won't be too long of a daf, particularly because Shabbos begins in an hour. So that's what I'm working with. But it should not be that big of a daf, I don't think. So friends, let us jump in. All right, friends, we're going to begin on Daf Chaf Amid Beis, about like 10 or 15 lines or so from the bottom on Daf Chaf Amid Beis. Okay, second word on the line, Iboya Lehu. They asked a kasha. Tumah Mau Shetoil L'Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglaim. What effect does tumah have on Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglaim? So what are we talking about? We're talking about you have a kohen, and the kohen goes into the Azar. He's going to do his avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, and he does Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglaim when he goes into the Azar. So he goes over to the basin, he goes over to the kiyor, and he washes his hands and his feet. And Givaldik, he's doing his avoda, whatever. And then what happens is so the assumption for now, friends, is that we're talking about tumas yadayim. We're talking about tumah d'Rabbanan, right? We're not talking about where he touched a dead sheretz or something like that. We're talking about where maybe he touched pigul or nosar, things that aren't really tamei midoraisa, just the tamei midorabanan. The Chacham said that the metami is hayodayim. So this you just have to. So if I understand correctly, it says matbilin b'mayim. You have to. So to get rid of the tumas yadayim, you just soak them in water. I looked at the Rambam. I'm trying to understand exactly what this matbilin b'mayim is. I don't think that it means that you wash it. And it doesn't say yirchatzu b'mayim. It doesn't say to wash it. It sounds to me like you kind of immerse it. I looked at the Rambam. He was kind of comparing it in the same halach. He's talking about immersing your whole body in the mikvah. So it sounds to me like maybe you just have to immerse your hands in a mikvah or something. But then you're immediately pure. All right. So we're not talking about any kind of serious. We're not talking about tumah midoraisa over there. The assumption is that we're talking about tumah midorabanan. Maybe you touched pigul and osar. I guess there's a lot of stuff going on in the azar. Anyways, so it says the Gemara, that's a kasha. Tumah mau shetoil l'kiddush yadayim v'raglaim. What effect does tumah have on kiddush yadayim v'raglaim? If your hands become tameh, right? Tumah d'Rabbanan, tumas yadayim. So do you have to redo your kiddush yadayim raglaim imtim salam yitzia lo paslo. So we had a whole shaila at the end of the daf yesterday of if you leave the azore, do you have to redo your Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim? Let's say you don't. Let's say by leaving the azore, you don't have to redo your Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim. The guy v'chozi. Because at the end of the day, the guy is completely pure and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong, so to speak, with the guy. He just left. But over here, since the guy is tummy, right? He's not fit. I mean, he's got to immerse his hands. Nothing crazy. He can always immerse his hands and be fixed, but it won't be tummy anymore. But at least for the meantime, he's tummy derabbanan, tumas yadayim. So maybe, therefore, he kind of said, all right, and he stopped paying attention already. He said, okay, I'm tummy, what can I do? And he kind of left down his guard. He had hesach hadas from the Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim. He had a lapse of thought. It's interesting, the whole Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim thing, right? To be honest, I don't really know enough about Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim, I would say. It seems like it's not about tumah and tara, right? Because as we saw yesterday and as we're going to see again today, if going to the mikveh wouldn't satisfy Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim. Also, we saw, yesterday for me was Yom Kippur. So the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur goes to the mikveh, and he also does Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim before and after. So I'm not totally sure at the moment what exactly the purpose of Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim is. It sounds like it's just this thing that you kind of need to do, Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim. And so I guess you have to kind of if you take your mind off of it, if you get distracted, for example, if you have tumas yadayim and you say, well, I can't do that voda right now anyways, and you have hesach hadas, so maybe there goes the Kiddush Yadayim v'raglaim, maybe you have to redo it. Right, maybe because now he's tummy, maybe he had hesach hadas. Odilma came the hadar chazi, dakle v'lo masach daite, or maybe since it's nothing major, it's not like he's going to be a tvul yom after he goes to the mikveh or anything like that. No, he just takes his hands, he immerses them, and now he can go back to avodah. So because he's aware of this isn't such a major tumah kind of thing, all he needs to do is be tovel his hands, and he can go back to work. So maybe he didn't have hesach hadas, and therefore he doesn't have to re-mekadesh yadayim v'raglaim. What do you guys say? Tashma, come here. Kiddush yodav v'raglov v'nitmu. So we talk about Bryce. We saw this yesterday. That if a kohen does Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim v'nitmeu, and then his hands became tameh. So this is exactly our scenario. Matbilon ve'in tzarich likadesh. Well, that's what I was saying. So matbilon, immerse them, I guess, in a mikvah. Just take your hands and put them in the mikvah, I guess. Immerse them, and then that's it. Go back to work. You don't need to redo Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. Now, normally, if you go to the mikvah, by the way, so then you would have to redo your Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. If you go to the mikvah, you'd have to redo your Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. But this isn't that. It's just dipping your hands and go right back to work. So you don't have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. No, so there's our answer, right? Just dip your hands in the mikveh and go back to work. You don't have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. Where am I? Nitmu yadav lo mi baya. Lambe answers the Gemara. Wait a second, but that's not what we're talking about. That isn't what we're talking about. We're not talking about when just his hands became tameh. We're talking about kika mi baya. We're not talking about tumah derabbanan. Kika mi baya. What we're interested in, what we're asking about, is nitma kol gufa. What happens if he mamish becomes tameh? Tumas sheretz. Mamish, a real tummy. Go to the mikvah, you're a tvul yom till the end of the day. Is he going to have to redo his Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim? I guess maybe if he wants to, do hektar chalam bevarim that night, after nightfall already, he's no longer a tvul yom. So kogufo, tepukle, the kevon, the boy the memed hayav shemesh, asucha mosach daite. So the Gemara says, wait a second, but if we're talking about tumah deoraisa, if we're talking about real tumah, then he's, as we just said, he's going to be a tvul yom until the end of the day. And since he's going to be a tvul yom to the end of the day, so he's going to have hesach hadas. He's got the whole day. He can't do avodas. Of course he's going to have hesach hadas. So of course he's going to have to redo his Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. So kigon the itmei samuch the shkias hachamo. Well, it's talking about what? Well. What if he touches a dead sheretz right before shkia, mamish, right before shkia? So he says, "I touch a dead sheretz, no big deal. I'll just go to the mikvah. I'll be a tvul yom for about 2 seconds, and then it'll be shkia." It'll be shkia, and I won't be a tvul yom anymore. I can go right back to work. So there's no hesach hadas. If the whole concern is just about being a tvul yom, I can give you an okimta where he's not going to be a tvul yom, becomes tameh shortly before shkia. Tashma, come and here pare. Okay, pare adume. Reb Chia bar Reb Yosef Omar says Reb Chia bar Reb Yosef mekadesh bichli shoris. He does Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim in the Azara, right? Bifnim in the Azara, v'yotze, and then he goes out to Har HaZeisim to slaughter, to burn the Pare Aduma. Rabbi Yechon says, "Afilu b'chutz." No, you can even do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim outside of the Azara. V'afilu b'klei chol, even in a non-kli sharis. Va'afilu be'mekeda shel cheres, even a fire pot or something of earthenware, even out of an earthenware, just like out of an earthenware vessel. So, okay, so we're saying that he does Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim be'etzem before he goes and burns the paradum. Right, the kohen is doing Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. He's going out to Har HaZeisim. He's going to burn the paraduma. V'ha'para d'tamuye mitaminon le. Now here's the interesting thing about para aduma. I think we've seen this before. Anyway, okay, it looks like we saw it in Chagiga and Yoma. By the para aduma, we beshita make the kohen who's burning the para aduma. We beshita, we make him tameh, as we learned the other day. Right, from Viza Tar ala Tame, right, Tar Mashma, right, the Tame or something, right, that we said that Davko, when it comes to, not that, we said that the halacha is that when it comes to being, right, the Kohen Usaref Para Aduma, even a Tvul Yom, the halacha is that even a Tvul Yom is kosher to burn the Para Aduma. Now the thing is, here's the thing. The thing is, the Tzedukim disagree. The Tzedukim say, no, Viza Atar ala Tameh. You have to be Tahor. And if you were Tameh and you went to the mikvah, if you're a Tvul Yom, you'd have to wait until Hayav Shemesh. You can't be, according to the Tzedukim, you can't be, a person who's Tameh can't burn the Para Aduma. Or, I guess, sprinkle the para aduma, the mechatos. So therefore, b'shita, what we do is we make the kohen who's burning the para aduma, we b'shita make him tameh, and then we throw him in the mikvah, and then he burns the para aduma as a tvul yom, just to stick it to the tzdukim, and to say, no, a tvul yom is mutter to burn the para aduma, and not only is it mutter, we are b'shita gonna have a tvul yom burn the para aduma. So v'apara tamuye mitame that we b'shita are mitame the kohen usarif esapar. The Tanan is we learn in the mission mitame are you a kohen usarif esapar. We b'shita be mitame the kohen who is burning the pari. Umadbilin also, and we would then throw in the mikvah, right? Metamed you as a kohen asorif as a paru madbilin also, and then we would dafka put him in the mikvah there in Har HaZeisim. I believe, or maybe it was machlokas of Zara Zaysim. But anyways, they would be matamim, and he would go to the mikvah. The lahotzi beliban shel tzedukim, just to stick it to the tzedukim, and to convince them, show you omim, because they would say b'me'orvei shemesh ha'isa na'ases, that they would have to say that the para aduma had to be burned by somebody who is no longer tameh. It was already after, he's no longer a tvul yom, it's higher of shemesh, he's no longer a tvul yom. So shmamina zeu. So what do we see, friends? So what do we see? So we were saying that when it comes to the para aduma, the kohen is doing Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim before he leaves, right? Let's say according to Reb Chia Bar Yosef, he does Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim in the Azar, then he goes out to Har HaZeisim to burn the para aduma. We're mitameim there, and then he goes to the mikvah. So we're mitameim there, and as he's tameh, he doesn't have to redo. As a tameh person, he doesn't have to redo. He doesn't have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim over again. So there you go. It sounds like tumah is not going to require a Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayiming. So shmamina lo possible. Right? Shmamina lo possible tumah. So we see that tumah is not going to be posel the Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim, and for the Gemara, not a proof. Not a proof, shiny pare, that para adume is different. So there's actually, you have to change the girsa shtickle. So I'm going to read it with the amended girsa. Rashi, I believe, changes it, and also the Shita Mekubetzes. So I'm going to read it based on the Gos V'Tzionim, seems to be quoting the Shita Mekubetzes. So whole utvul yom kosher bas, since a tvul yom, I mean, this is a big chiddush, right? Since a tvul yom is kosher to burn the para aduma, whole tvul yom kosher ba lo pasil ba tumah b'kiddush shalah. So specifically, it's para aduma is an exceptional case where even a tvul yom is mutter to burn the para aduma, and therefore in that, by para aduma specifically being tameh, is not going to require a new Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. So Yachi Lama Li de Mekadesh. Well, then if that's the case, so why even do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim in the first place? Ke'ein avoda ba'inun. Because even though it's exceptional, we still want it to be ke'ein avoda. We want things, at least on the surface, to be done like we do by all avodas. But the fact of the matter is, if he becomes tameh by para aduma, it's not going to require a new Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. So in terms of the answer of, does tumah require a new Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim? Seems like it's a little bit unclear still, right? We tried to prove from para aduma that it doesn't require a new Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim, but I think like we had kind of landed on, got into at the end of the daf yesterday with somebody who leaves the azara. It sounds here also with tumah, it's kind of unresolved. Okay, and now we get up to the next section of today's daf, Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim in the kiyor. Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim in the kiyor. Okay, so Ibaya lehu, they asked a question. Ma'u l'kadesh yadav v'raglav b'kiyor. You hear that question? Let's go weiter. Mimenu amar Achman v'lo b'socho, odem afilu b'socho. Oh, so frag the Gemara. Normally, the way that the kiyor, I think is, as I said earlier in the introduction, the basin, the way that the kiyor works, I think, is that there are like spouts. I haven't actually looked up what it looks like. I should really have another look at what it looks like. Although it does look like it went through some changes, as we already saw the other day. I know we're going to reference it today also, but we saw the other day that Ben Kohen, he added 12 spouts, I think 12 spouts. But anyways, the kiyor had spouts, and you would open up the spouts and do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim that way, and I guess have the spouts, pour on your feet and your hands. Do you like the Levim do it? I have no indication that like the Levium did it, but that would kind of remind me of like Birkas Kohanim kind of thing. But anyways, I don't know. I'm still learning about this Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. Akoponim. Oh, so what if instead of like opening up the spout and releasing the water that way, the person just like went in, he just put in his hands, put in his feet, and those Makadosh Yadayim v'Raglayim that away. So what happens, right? So again, that's the kasha. Ma'u l'kadesh yadav v'raglav b'kiyor. Can you do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim in the kiyor, or do you need to release the water via the spout? Mimenu amar Rachmana v'lo b'socho. Is it that the Torah says that you have vrachatzu? What does it say? Vrachatzu aharon uvonav mimenu as the mesogleim. That Aharon and his children will wash their hands and their feet from the kiyor. V'lo b'socho, not in the kiyor. Oduma afilu besocho, or maybe even in the kiyor is fine. Amar Nachman bar Yitzchok Toshma. Says Nachman bar Yitzchok, come and hear. Oh, shetoval be'mei mayre ve'avad avodaso psula. So we saw yesterday, I believe, and we're seeing it again now, and I referenced it, I think, in the introduction, that if one goes to the mikvah and then says, okay, well, I went to the mikvah, let me now serve in the, I'm a kohen, let me now go do the avodah. No, that doesn't work, which is interesting, right? So it sounds like this isn't a tumah and tara thing, right? If you're tummy, so you go to the mikvah. This isn't a tumah and tara thing. Torah kohanim are also doing Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. I don't know, this is probably similar, maybe it's similar kind of to just like washing your hands before davening, or like, maybe before you eat bread, you wash your hands, like that kind of it's like a, just, wash up quickly before you get to the avodah. So if a person went to the mikvah, if a kohen went to the mikvah, the avad, and then after going to the mikvah, he does avodah the Beis Hamikdash, avodah psula. His avodah is pesula. So hot me kiyor dumya de me mayre vavad avodah kshera. So we want to be medayek. Okay. If he immerses in a cave, in a mikvah, if he immerses in a mikvah and then shows up to do avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, that doesn't work. But what if we're not talking about a mikvah? What if we're talking about a kiyor, and he immerses not necessarily his whole body, but he immerses. Normally by the kiyor you wouldn't immerse; you would release the water via a spout. But in this case, you immersed your hands and your feet. So we want to say, look, by Be'mayra, by going to a mikvah, we said that's no good. But immersing in the kiyor, i.e., sticking your hands and feet in the kiyor, that we want to say is fine. That's the diuk, right? The mikvah is no good, but the kiyor, maybe that is good. Lo, no. Me'mayre, it's tricha, no. The kiyor also, I'll say, sticking your hands and feet in the kiyor, just like immersing in the mikvah, will be insufficient, will not work, will not pass as Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, still have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. So also immersing in the kiyor also does not work. Okay, so why then specifically point out the mikvah? I'll tell you why. Shelo toma, you shouldn't say kol gufo tova boin yodav v'ragav lo kol shekain. Well, because you shouldn't have the thought, because you might think, Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim is just my hands and my feet. Kal v'chomer, if I go to the mikvah, my whole body I immerse in the mikvah. Kal v'chomer, then that should suffice for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. So the chiddush there is that if a person goes to the mikvah, that doesn't suffice for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. I think that the halacha is that, like, after you go to the mikvah, I think after you shower also, you're supposed to wash your hands, right? So it sounds like this is kind of like arguably a similar thing. Maybe that's kind of like the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. Maybe that's the analogy that maybe that's an okay analogy to relate to. It's like kind of like, doing washing your hands before davening, before doing Devarim Sheb'Kedusha. So you're also, if you go to the mikvah, You might think, well, I went to the mikvah, I put my whole body in the mikvah. That's better. And that's better than just my hands and feet. But no, that's not enough. The halacha is, even if you go to the mikvah, you're still going to have to do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. So we want to argue that, at least to say that the raya from the mikveh, right, the fact that a mikveh doesn't work, that's not to say that sticking your hands and feet in a kiyor does work. The reason why we point out mikveh is because I may have had the opportunity to say, look, if I put my whole body, then certainly it should work for just my hands and feet. But no, it doesn't. You still have to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And now for the final segment of today's daf, Linah for the water of the kiyor. Linah for the water of the kiyor. We are going to see a three-way machlokes between Rav Chia Bar Yosef, I think, Rav Chizda, and Reb Yochanan. Here we go. Of course, we saw the other day. The truth is that this machlokes, this is not the first time we're seeing this machlokes, so we already have some context here. We saw this machlokes specifically between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon with regard to Linah for Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, that if you do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, let's say at night, will you have to do it again the next day? We saw the machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Here we're revisiting what the halacha is when it comes to the actual water in the kiyor. Right? The kiyor is a klei sharis, and it's mekadesh the water, and therefore the question is there a halacha of Linah when it comes to the water in the kiyor? Comes Amud HaShachar, or perhaps even Shkia. That water becomes pasul, and you won't be able to use it anymore. So let's see. Amar Reb Chia Bar Yosef, says Reb Chia Bar Yosef, me kiyor nifsalin limatirin, kimatirin le'evarim ke'evarim. This is very interesting. Who could tell me what this means? What's matirim? What's evarim? So matirim are the avodas hadam be'etzim, which is matir the korban. I think this comes up a lot in Masechta Me'ila. I think like matir the korban. Oh man, I don't want to say too much, meaning not because I don't want to overwhelm you with information, because I don't want to say something that's wrong. But be'etzim, I think like after zrikas hadam, that is matir the basar to be eaten to the kohanim by kodesh kodshim, to the bailim by kodshim kalim. I think that from the time that the korban is slaughtered, I think it becomes, even for like, I don't want to speak too much, but to say too much because I might make a mistake. But the point is, the avodas hadam, specifically the zrikas hadam, is now matir the meat, the korban. So be'etzim, the avodas hadam is what's being referred to as the matirin. Okay, so a kohen shows up in the azar. He can't just get right to work, as we know by now. He has to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim first. So the question is, the water in the kiyor, that's what we're talking about. Can you use the water that is presently in the kiyor for Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim to be able to do the avodas hadam? Shchita, Kabbalah, although Shchita is kshera bizarre, I assume that the zar, would a zar have to, well, a zar wouldn't really go far enough into the azar, I think, to have to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. But anyways, so let's just let's talk about the avodas that are mitzvahs kahuna. So at least Kabbalah Sadam, Malacha Sadam, Zrika Sadam. So the question is the water that's presently in the kiyor usable for matirin, for avodas sadam? Is it usable for the emurin, for burning the fats and limbs? What's the difference? The difference is, of course, we know by now. We haven't learned this extensively, but it has come up that avodas hadam you could do until shkia. You could do zrikas hadam until shkia. Hekter cholav and beivarim, as we know already from the first day, from our first day together on Babble on Talmud, the bays of Masechta Brachis, all those years ago. Hekter cholav and beivarim mitzvoson archiyah lo amud hashachar, the first mission in Shas. So the fats and limbs can be burned until the morning, until alos hashachar, until amud hashachar. So says Reb Chia Bar Yosef that the halacha is that the water in the kiyor becomes pasul, comes shkia for the avodas adam, for the what he calls the matirin, the avodas adam, and comes amud hashachar, they become pasul for hektar chalavim ve'evarim. Comes amud hashachar, the water in the kiyor is no longer usable to do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim for hektar chalavim ve'evarim. Now, we had learned the other day about this concept of putting the kiyor in, right? There was the lishka sagola, as we saw the other day in the azar. It was one of the offices, one of the chambers on the northern wall of the azar. And in the lishka sagola was the bor hagola, which was this pit that would supply all of the water for the azar. And that's where the water for the kiyor would come from. And what they would do is, they would put the kiyor in the bor agola at night, so that it would not be pasul belina. So it would not become pasul belina. They would put the kiyor into the bor agola at night, so that it would not become pasul belina. It would be, I imagine, immersed in the mayim chayim that was in the bor, and that would prevent it from becoming pasul belina. So if we take Rab Chia Bar Yosef Shita, what he's saying is, come Shkia, if the kiyor has not yet been lowered into the bor hagola by the time by Shkia time, even if you put the kiyor into the bor, you lower it into the bor hagola, let's say an hour later, and you leave it there until the morning. So while the water in the kiyor will still be usable the next day for hektar chalavim ve'evarim, because that is until amud hashachar, and the kiyor was lowered into the bor hagola before amud hashachar. That's fine. So for hektar chalavim ve'evarim, the water in the kiyor in this case would still be good the next day. But because it was only lowered into the bor hagola after Shkia, it won't be usable the next day if you're going to want to do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim for matirin for avodas hadam. So that is the opinion of Rav Chia Bar Yosef, who says that the water in the kiyor becomes pasul for avodas hadam come Shkia time, which is also the cutoff for being able to do avodas hadam, and the water in the kiyor becomes pasul belina for hektar chalavim ve'evarim comes amud hashachar, which is the cutoff for being able to do hektar chalavim ve'evarim. You have to so really what you want to do is you want to lower the kiyor into the bor hagola before shkia, so that way the next day, if you want to make sure that that the water is available the next day for Kiddush Yadayim, for avodas hadam, for hektar chalavim ve'evarim, for everything. So, again, Reb Chia Bar Yosef says, Reb Chia Bar Yosef, Mei kiyor, the water in the kiyor, nifsal the matirin, kimatirin, the water in the kiyor becomes pasul for use for avodas hadam, for the matirin, at the time, like the matirin, right? The cutoff for being able to do the avodas hadam is shkia. That is also when the water in the kiyor will become pasul belina for being able to be used for avodas hadam, leivarim kevarim, and for use for hektar chalavim ve'evarim. So just like they're cut off, you can only do hektar chalavim ve'evarim until amud hashachar. So also the water in the kiyor must be lowered into the bor hagola before amud hashachar to avoid the water in the kiyor becoming pasul belina. Rav Chizda Amar after matirin and nifsalin elo be'amud hashachar ke'evarim, whereas Rav Chizda says there is only one important time when it comes to lowering the kiyor into the bor hagola, and that is amud hashachar. Make sure that the kiyor is lowered into the bor agola before Amud HaShachar, and then comes Amud HaShachar, the kiyor is in the bor agola, you take it out after Amud HaShachar, and the water in the kiyor is usable for the next day, for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, for everything, for Avodas Adam, for Hekter Chalavim Ve'Varim. It does not become possible for Avodas Adam. The water in the kiyor does not become possible for Avodas Adam. Come Shkia, no, everything is at Amud HaShachar. Now, Rabbi Yochanan Omer, Rabbi Yochanan is a third shita, or apparently figuring out Rabbi Yochanan's shita is what's going to keep us occupied now until I run out of time. Hopefully, I think I'm probably just going to push to make sure I don't run out of time, but hopefully I'll be able to just keep a pace. Rabbi Yochanan Omer says, Rabbi Yochanan, kiyor, and when it comes to the kiyor, kevon sheshako, so once you put it, once you submerge it, I imagine you're probably submerging the kiyor. I feel like there's like a lot of stuff that I'm like, there's a lot of question marks in all this stuff. The Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, the being mishakeya, the kiyor into the bor agola. I guess that they're probably immersing it. Shokeya. I imagine. Probably want to immersing it, lowering it into the bor agola. Once you lower it into the bor agola, and the assumption is that you're lowering it into the bor agola before shkia, shuv ein ma'aleu. Do not take it out of the bor agola until the morning. The assumption being that if you do take it out before the morning, if you take it out at any time during the night, it'll be possible not just for Avodas Adam the next day, but even for Hekter Chalavim Ve'Varim that night. A kohen comes to the Azara during the night, he wants to do Hekter Chalavim Ve'Varim. He wouldn't be able to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim with the water in the kiyor that was taken out of the bor agola in the middle of the night. No, it would be shkia would be the cutoff both for Avodas Adam as well as Hekter Chalavim Ve'Varim. So basically, you have Reb Chia Bar Yosef who says that the kiyor is possible Linah at shkia for Avodas Adam and at Amud HaShachar for Evarim. Rav Chizah says that everything, both Matirin and Evarim, is at Amud HaShachar. Rabbi Yochanan, I believe, is saying that shkia is the cutoff both for the Avodas Adam as well as the Evarim. And therefore, if you pull out, right, therefore, what, right, it says, Kevon sheshako, shuv ein maleu, don't take it out, and if you do, it won't even be usable for Hekter Chalavim Ve'Varim that night. To which the Gemara says, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. Rabbi Yochanan's shita. Are you telling me that Rabbi Yochanan is saying that if you take out the kiyor from the bor agola in the middle of the night, the water in the kiyor would be possible for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim for that night to be able to burn the fats in the limbs? Hekter Chalavim Ve'Varim. V'amr Abasi, Amr B'Yochanan, Mishmei De'ilfa. Kiyor shelo shako mi ba'erev. That if the kiyor was not immersed before shkia, so it's now the middle of the night, the kiyor is still unimmersed. Mikadesh v'mena la'avodas laila. You can use it for avodas laila. So therefore, if you take out the kiyor from the bor agola in the middle of the night, you should be able to use the mei kiyor for Hekter Chalavim Ve'Varim. That should not be a problem. U'l'machar eino mekadesh. And then the next day, eino mekadesh, the question is, what exactly does that mean, eino mekadesh? We asked the same question the other day. whether it means that the water is going to be possible the next day, you can't use it, or if it means that like Rabbi Lazar says that the person is not going to have to redo Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. But anyways, the point being for now, you can use the kiyor during the night for avodas laila. Okay, so Gemara says, wait. You know what? When Rabbi Yochanan says that, that when Rabbi Yochanan says that when the kiyor is submerged before shkia, don't take it out again. It means don't take it out before the morning if you plan to use that water for matirin, for avodas hadam the next day. But if you want to use it for that night, that is not a problem. So what's he betzim saying? He's betzim saying like Reb Chia bar Yosef, right? That comes shkia, right? You better make sure, if you want to use the kiyor the next day for avodas hadam, you better make sure to submerge it before shkia. And if you do submerge it before shkia and you take it out after shkia, so you can use it for the night, sure, for ekter chalav ve'varim, but you won't be able to use it the next day for avodas hadam. So Yehochi, I knew Reb Chia bar Yosef. Then that's that sounds like that's the same opinion of Reb Chia bar Yosef. That comes shkia, the kiyor become possible for avodas hadam, but they're still permitted for hekter chalav and ve'varim. So ika benayu gizeres shikua. So actually, no. You know what? The Gemara is going to ask later. It sounds like Rabbi Yochanan now is actually saying the same thing as Rabbi Chia. But be'etzim, what Rabbi Yochanan is saying actually. Did I say Rabbi Chia? It sounds like he's actually saying the same thing as Rabbi Chia. But what Rabbi Yochanan's shita actually is that you have until Amud HaShachar. Forget about Rabbi Chia. No, what Rabbi Yochanan is saying is that you have as long as you submerge the kiyor before Amud HaShachar, so that's fine. It'll be fine for the next day. You'll be able to use it for whatever you want, for avodas hadam, for ekter chalav mevarim the next day. That's fine. All Rabbi Yochanan is saying is that you need to submerge the kiyor in water in advance because he doesn't want to take any. He doesn't want to take any risks. He doesn't want to take any risks, right? He doesn't want to wait till the last second. Yes, you have until Amud HaShachar to submerge the kiyor in the bor hagola in order to prevent Linah, but don't wait for the last. Don't wait for the last second. Rabbi Yochanan is saying, yes, you do have until Amud HaShachar, but put it in the bor hagola in advance, just so that you don't run any risks of making the water puzzle belina. That's all he's saying. So you can now gezer shikua. So actually, Rabbi Yochanan is not saying like Reb Chia bar Yosef. Rather, he's saying you have until Amud HaShachar. Just he's saying submerge it in the bor hagola in advance, just so that you're not playing with fire and saving things till the last minute. And again, later on we're going to ask, wait, if he's just saying wait until Amud HaShachar, then he's be'etzim saying the same thing as Rav Chisda. Okay, we'll get there. Rabbi Yechanan said, Kiddush Yadayim l'tumas hadeshen l'mocher ein tzarich l'kadesh shekvar Kiddush b'tchilas avoda. If you remember, we saw on yesterday's daf that Rabbi Yochanan said that, if you remember, by Trumas Hadeshen, Trumas Hadeshin was the first avoda that was done. Trumas Hadeshin was the first avoda that was done in the morning in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin was done before Amud HaShachar. And Rabbi Yochanan had said that if a kohen does Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim before Amud HaShachar for Trumas Hadeshin, so okay, he's not going to have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim Nochamol the next day. That could work for the entire next day. And the question was, who does he hold like? So it's Machlokas Abaye and Rava. Abaye had said, Be'etzim holds like Rebbe, right? Remember, Rebbe's Shita, right? This is Machlokas Rebbe and Rabbi Reb Shimon. Rebbe had said that by Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, there is a concept of Linah, comes Amud HaShachar, you're going to have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim again. Whereas Reb Shimon says you do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, it can work even for 10 days, he says. So the question is, when Rabbi Yochanan says that when you do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin before Amud HaShachar, and Rabbi Yochanan says you don't have to do it again the next day, who's he holding like? Abaye says Itak holds like Rebbe. Abaye had said that he holds like Rebbe, and Rebbe says, look, Rebbe's opinion is, look, the psul of Linah when it comes to Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim is anyways only midrabanan. And since when it comes to Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin, it's anyways being done after Kros HaGaver, after Kakadoodle-Doo o'clock. And therefore, you know what? In that case, you don't have to redo the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. That was Abaye's opinion. Rava's opinion was that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon when it comes to, specifically when it comes to Trumas Hadeshin at the beginning of the day. So when it comes to Trumas Hadeshin and you're going to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim before Amud HaShachar, there he holds like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon that, you know, you don't have to redo Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. But otherwise, when we're not talking about Trumas Hadeshin, for example, we're talking about you did Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim in the middle of the night, and now comes Amud HaShachar, he would hold like Rebbe that you would have to redo Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. So now, Ve'omer Rabbi Yochanan had said, Kiddush Yadav l'Trumas Hadeshin. If a kohen had done Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin, l'macher ein tzarich l'kadesh. So he doesn't need to redo the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim the next day. Shekvar Kiddush mitchilas avoda, because he already did Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim at the beginning of the avoda, the first avoda of the day for Trumas Hadeshin. So Bishlam the Rav, I understand according to Rav the Bukim Lahik, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who says that specifically when it comes to Trumas Hadeshin, Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Okay, so by Trumas Hadeshin he holds Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Then what about the Brisa earlier, where he had said, right, to make sure to do, right, to submerge the kiyor in the water, to make sure that, that it's not going to be possible Linah by Amud HaShachar. So that's like Rebbe, right? Because according to Rabbi Yochanan only holds like, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon when it comes to Trumas Hadeshin. However, in the middle of the night, right, if a kohen did Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim in the middle of the night for Ekter Chalav Be'var, he would hold like Rebbe there, and you would have to do Trumas. You would have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. Comes, it would be possible Linah. So therefore, when it comes to Trumas Hadeshin, he holds like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. When Rabbi Yochanan had said that to make sure that the kiyor is submerged before Amud HaShachar, because otherwise it would be possible Linah, that's like Rebbe. He holds like Rebbe over there. Then in general, we would have to be concerned about being possible Linah. And therefore, when it comes to Trumas Hadeshin, So he says he doesn't have to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, and also he doesn't say anything about having to resubmerge the kiyor, right? When the kohen goes and he does, when the kohen goes and he does Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin, Rabbi Yochanan doesn't say anything about now having to put back the kiyor in the Bor Agola, because there, specifically when it comes ready to Trumas Hadeshin, he holds like a Belazar Reb Shimon. And also Belazar Reb Shimon would say, and this is a shtickle chiddush because we were trying to figure this out the other day, Belazar Reb Shimon would say that also the water would not be possible Linah. So everything that has to do with Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, Rabbi Yochanan holds like Belazar Reb Shimon, and it would not be possible Linah. But earlier, the other brisa, what he was saying that you have to, earlier, not the brisa, but earlier when Rabbi Yochanan says you have to be concerned about the psul of Linah by the kiyor, that's because over there he holds like Rebbe. It's only by Trumas Hadeshin that he holds like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Ela Abaye, but according to Abaye, the mukim la kirebi, but according to Abaye, who had said that Rabbi Yochanan Be'etzem holds like Rebbe, and just specifically when it comes to the psul of Linah by Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, that's only Midar Abanan. We said since it's after Kros HaGaver, so we're not going to make you do it again. The Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin could work for the rest of the day, but that's only by the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin. But the actual kiyor, which was in right when Rebbe says that that psul of Linah by Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim is midrabanan, that's only for Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. When we say that if you washed your hands and your feet, so comes Amud HaShachar, you have to wash your hands and your feet again, that's by washing your hands and your feet. But in terms of, is the water in the kiyor going to be pasul b'lina? Yes, it will. And even if it was used, right, even though it was taken out of the Bor Agola just after Kros HaGaver, for Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, it doesn't matter. Because since the water is in the kiyor, and the kiyor is a klei sharis, and the water is here, right? The Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, you're just washing your hands and feet. We're saying, okay, fine, that works for the rest of the day. But the actual water that's in the klei sharis, that's in the kiyor, comes Amud HaShachar. Even if you just took it out a few minutes ago, after Kros HaGaver for Trumas Hadeshin, for Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin, comes Amud HaShachar, it's going to be pasul b'lina. So therefore, if that's the case, why doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say anything here about having to put it back before, having to resubmerge it before Amud HaShachar? It sounds like Rabbi Yochanan is just saying that you could push it, take it out of the Bor Agola, use it for Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, for Trumas Hadeshin, and you're not going to have to put it back before Amud HaShachar. But if that's the case, then what's the deal? Why over there is he saying you have to make sure that you put it in the Bor Agola before Amud HaShachar, and over here he's saying for Trumas Hadeshin you can take it out, do Kiddush Yadayim for Trumas Hadeshin, you don't have to put it back. So according to Abai, the Mukim Lo Kirebi, who says that Rabbi Yochanan by Trumas Hadeshin holds like Rabbi, but he says only because it's Derabanan, specifically by psul of Linah by Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. But by the water itself in the kiyor, it would be pasul b'lina. And kasha de Rebbe ad Rebbe. So that shita, right? So it's a Rebbe who says that the water becomes pasul by Linah by Amud HaShachar. How come if Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rebbe, how come he's not saying that you have to put it back into the Bor Agola before Amud HaShachar? So ma'ishno asam de mishakeile. How come earlier Rabbi Yochanan had said don't take it out of the Bor Agola, and if you do, make sure to put it back in before Amud HaShachar? Ma'ishno achad lo mishakeile. And how come over here, if it's like if Abai is correct, and Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rebbe, so then why isn't he saying anything about putting it back into the Bor Agola before Amud HaShachar? So the misalik leva adam mishakele. You know what the fact of the matter is, right? Abaye would say yes. Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rebbe, and when the kohen takes out the kiyor to do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim for Trumas Hadeshin, he's then of course going to put it back in to the Bor Agola before Amud HaShachar. Yochi l'mocher einu mekadesh Amai ein tzarich likadesh. Amai. Right, so if that's the case, so then when Rabbi Yochanan had said that the next day, right, meaning Rabbi Yochanan had said the name of Ilfa, that if the kiyor was not put into the boragola before Shkia, so then it was not put into the boragola before Shkia. So then you can use it all night for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglai before Hekta Chalab and Ve'varim. But the next day, it will be possible. But if we're saying that you put it back into the boragola before Amar Shachar, why would it be possible the next day? So ain't tzarich likadesh. No, it's saying that the person, not that the water, not that the kiyor becomes possible, but that the person is not going to need to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim the next day, since he already did Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. L'meimra de lematirin merza chazi. So if basically what we're saying, that as long as you put the kiyor back in the boragola before Amud HaShachar, so then they won't be possible Linah. Not for matirin, not for evarim. So that's the shita of Rav Chizda. Ike benayu mitzvahs shi kua. Yes, but the difference is, do you have to, right? Rav Chizda, Rabbi Yochanan had said that we want you already to submerge it in the boragola beforehand and not wait to the last minute. Whereas Rav Chizda says, no, you can already wait to the last minute. Mesa, we have a kasha on, I got to hustle a little bit. We have a kasha on Rav Chizda, lo hayroin also velo shomin eskolo ad sheshom kol eitz sheosa ben kotin muchni kiyor. That when it came to the kohen who was doing Trumas HaDeshen, and he would go to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, he would be very silent, like a mouse. And they wouldn't hear him, but they would hear when he would go, and we're assuming that when he would go and remove the kiyor from the bor hagola, they would hear him, because there was that kind of mechanism that Ben Kotin made in order to remove some kind of pulley system to remove the kiyor from the bor hagola, and they would hear that, and they would say, oh, vein omrim igia eis Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, oh, it's time for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim min hakiyor, and they would go and do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim as well. My love, the misalik lay. So is it not that they're hearing the kohen remove the kiyor from the bor hagola, which means it was already submerged there, like Rabbi Yochanan, not like Rav Chizda, where they would wait to the last minute. So so we see that it was already submerged, like Reb Yochanan. Lo the mishakeya lay. No, he wasn't removing the kiyor from the bor hagola. He was actually, after he was doing the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, he was then lowering it into the bor hagola before Amud HaShachar. Either mishakeya, if he's lowering it, mimishtamei kali, would you hear it? Mishakeya begilgalat. Well, he would lower it with a wheel, and that would make noise. A different way of saying the same thing is he would lower it with a chumrasei, which is also a wheel. So, and it would make noise, and we are talking about lowering it. That's what Rav Chizda would say, so that people would hear v'leshamei v'leisi, and the Kohanim who were in the Azar, they would hear the kiyor being lowered into the bor hagola, and they would say, oh, we better get up. Why did they need to hear the kiyor being lowered into the bor hagola? Wouldn't they hear gvini karuz? He was the guy who would go around waking everybody up. The veker, I think they would call it in Yiddish. Be trey hekere havi abdu. They would have two types of alarms. Teshama me'ai asi v'shama me'ai asi. You know, if you would hear this alarm, whoever heard this alarm would come, whoever heard that alarm would come. Okay, Chaver, that was a rush. I've really been trying not to rush things recently, but I really don't have a choice. I'm so behind. Yesterday was Yom Kippur, tomorrow is Shabbos. I'm like super behind in everything, and I got all this new tech that's been distracting me. So my apologies for that, but okay, I had to hustle there at the end. So just a quick recap. The first thing we discussed was the effect of tumah on Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, right? If you become tameh, do you have to redo Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim? It was kind of inconclusive. We tried to bring a raya from Parah Aduma. That didn't really work out. Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim in the kiyor. What if you don't pour the water from the spout, but you actually dip your hands and feet into the spout? That was also a little bit not so clear. I think maybe possibly you can argue that we were leaning to say that it would that it would not work. And then we got to Linah for the water of the kiyor, which ended up being a bit of of an involved sugya, which I wish I had more time to do. Anyways, Reb Chia Bar Yosef said that for the matirin you have until shkia, evarim you have until amud hashachar. Reb Chizda says matirim and evarim is until amud hashachar. Reb Yochanan agrees with Reb Chizda that matirin and evarim are until amud hashachar, but you have to lower the kiyor. You want to lower the kiyor in advance so that when Amud HaShachar comes, when it comes time for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim of the Trumas Hadeshin, it's already there as like a heker of like, don't forget to put it back in. Anyways, that was Daf Chof Aleph of Masechta Zevachim. I hope you enjoyed. Cheers.